thing that's happening in our city and in our church, and I wanted to kind of give you guys a picture, give us all a picture of what I feel like God's doing. Some of the stuff we're going to be talking about over the next few minutes is pretty big, pretty crazy, hairy, audacious stuff. And for some of you, your tendency is going to be, but what about me? How does this, what does this mean for me? Who's going to take care of me, or things like that? And just for this next hour, I'd just like to say that's going to get taken care of, but I'm not really going to address that right now. I'm going to be talking kind of in very large brush strokes about what I think next needs to become, where I think our city needs to be going, where I think church in our city needs to be going, and just kind of explain a lot of those big pieces and how this affects you personally. We'll be talking about kind of in the future. So if that's all right, just to kind of those kinds of questions we will definitely answer probably in another week or following week. Today I'd like to focus on where are we going as a community, and how is God shaping what is happening in our city for His kingdom and for His glory. So to kind of begin there, I think most of you know I grew up in Hong Kong, and I spent a lot of time overseas in international expat communities, and it's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot of things about us, about you and us, and what is God doing in international community. And then I moved to Beijing about 13 years ago. And we started Next about 8 years ago. And just over the last years have been thinking a lot about church and about the way God uses church and the way God uses what we do here to build His kingdom. And so I wanted to share some of these ideas with you and thoughts about where does all this go. And so I want to draw some of it out on this board. Could I have some help with this? I don't have two hands. Just pull this up maybe to like about here or so. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Great team. Got it. Awesome. All right, cool. One of the things that I've noticed is that in expat and international communities, everybody comes, right? Most of these people, most of us, most of us chose to come here. In fact, I would say probably all of us chose someday to come. If you guys can't see, you can move around. A little better? Okay. That everybody comes. And one of the questions is, who are you when you come? I got it. Who are you when you come? What I've seen is that a lot of us are broken. A lot of us have stuff that we need to get sorted. There's just healing issues, whether they're addictions or they're authority issues, or there's struggles with your parents and your families, relational issues, that a lot of us, when we come, we've got stuff. We've just got a lot of different things that need to be worked out. Some of us need to learn ministry tasks. Some of us need to learn business skills. Some of us need to learn a lot of different things. But essentially, when people come, one of the big things is there's some kind of developmental process that needs to happen. And the way I've kind of summed that up is everybody comes in various stages of raw. Various stages of raw. And then, kind of over the years that we've done it, we found that while people are in Beijing, something happens. And we'll talk about what that something is later. And then, by the time they leave, the idea is that they have been equipped, empowered, they've learned, they've seen, they've grown, they've been healed, they've received, they're not what they were back here. There's been a change. for the better. They've been, and the way I've been able to kind of summarize that in my mind is that they're now ready. And ready to do what would be the next question. And that's that they're ready to go. Because every single one of you someday is not going to be here anymore. You're going to be somewhere else. That's by design. All of you have been called to go into the kingdom to do and be who God has called you to be. God has brought you here in one state, and because of what happens here, He's now made you ready, equipped, empowered, ready to do what God has for you to do somewhere else. For the most part, generally speaking, all of you were brought here to have something happen to you so that when you get to that day, when you leave, you're ready. You're ready to do something, and that something, I'm going to change pens, this one's running out. That something is to be a disciple maker. God has called all of us to be disciple makers, right? It's not optional. All of us were called, when Jesus came into our hearts, we were all supposed to be disciple makers. The problem is that when we arrived here in the city, we didn't look like it. The broken, the not equipped, not empowered, not ready to do what God has for us to do, and then something happens, and God's hope is that by the time we get here, we are ready. That we are activated, that we can do all the things that God has intended for us to do. You know, in this room, all of us, I believe, the way I interpret the Scripture, God has called all of us to be apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers, according to Ephesians 4. To each one, grace has been given as Christ has apportioned it. He has given some to be apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers. And so in this room, all of us sit here as apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers. If you want to challenge that, I have some great reasons why I think that. You can come see me afterwards, because there are people who don't believe that everyone is. I believe everyone is, and I believe all of you are. But when you came, a lot of you didn't look like it. I didn't look like it when I came. And I'm still learning. I'm still in this process too. But all of us, I believe that by the time we get here, by the time we get to this point where we leave Beijing, that God intends for all of us to be activated, equipped, empowered apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers. So I believe that's what I think God does in this transformational process from raw to ready. That He gets all of us to be these 5 things so that we can be disciple makers. Now, I know some of you are like, but I'm not really a church guy. I'm not really that kind of, how does that work for me? I'm called somewhere else. I'm not supposed to, church things, yeah, that's good for somebody else to do. What about me? Okay? We'll talk about that in a minute. So just hold that question. It's coming. The thing I want to talk about first is what happens here? What is the tool that God uses to get people from raw to ready? What's the tool God uses to get people from raw to ready? And there's been one tool that I've seen that works over and over and over and over again. And it's the thing that most of you say when you say, why do you go to Next? The answer to why you go to Next. For most of you, you would say the community. It's because of the people. It's because of the relationships. It's because of the people that I meet there. The tool that I've seen God use, the tool that I've seen God use time and time again to bring His people from raw to ready is the relational community. Some of you know my story about when I was at Johan's birthday party about a little more than a year ago, maybe a year and 3 or 4 months ago. And I was sitting there, and there's about maybe 5 Christians, 5 of us from Next, and there's about 50 people in the room that Johan had invited. Johan was one of our leaders here at Next for a season. And about 50 people in the room that he had invited from work and from people that he knew. And so I was sitting in this room, and just through a variety of things that happened, I ended up at this table with these 3 other people that, in the space of about 10 minutes, the conversation just went so deep so quick. And we're already talking about Jesus and how they needed to give their lives to Jesus. And it was just amazing to see how hungry these people were. And I realized that if all these 50 people at this party showed up at Next the next day, that it would totally change the dynamic of who we are. We wouldn't be able to be who we are, and we wouldn't be able to serve these people and really show them the love of Jesus, because we're just not geared for that. And in that moment, I realized, oh my gosh, we need more Nexts. We need more of this kind of stuff. So all these 50 people could find Jesus, and they could find who God has made them to be. Because in my mind, all those 50 people at that party were all here. A lot of them weren't even saved yet. But God intends for them all to be here. God intends for every single one of those people to be activated to proclaim Jesus to all of their friends and to share with him how this is supposed to be. And so in my mind, what we needed to do, what we need a lot of these. We need a lot of relational communities. I use that language very specifically. We need a lot of communities, and not just ones that look like Next, because that's not what Jesus did, right? When Jesus was on the earth, he had lots of different kinds of relational communities. When you think about Jesus and John the Beloved, right, that's one-on-one. And then Jesus had Peter, James, and John, right, 1-on-3. And then Jesus and the disciples, 1-on-12. And then Jesus and the 70 or the 120, how you want to define that. And then Jesus and the multitudes, right? He had a variety of relationships, a variety of communities, if you want to call it that, a variety of them, because they all served different purposes. They all had different ways of doing it. And so, could we strategically place enough relationships, and could we develop enough of them that they would form kind of a net that everyone flowing through our city would be able to intersect Jesus in some way through a relational community? Could we do that? Could we, like a fisherman, develop these relational communities in such a way that we would be able to cast this net in front of all the fish that are swimming through our city, that they would all have no choice but to intersect Jesus in some way through us? Could we do that? Could we craft this kind of a net? My pen is dying. Could we craft this kind of net? One of the things that really excites me about this idea of this fishnet thing. Imagine for a second if we had, 10 years from now, there were 10,000 people meeting in a net like this. If there was relational communities that were fully active, producing disciple makers, producing this. Imagine if there were 10,000 people. And in our community at Next, we probably have about 40% turnover every year. So basically 40% of you are not going to be here August 2014, something like that. But for Beijing, let's conservatively say that that number is 20%. Okay? So 10,000 people. Man, all my pens are going. 10,000 people times 20% per year equals 2,000 people per year. If we built relational communities strategically placed to intersect 10,000 people, and we got them from raw to ready, and by the time they get here, they were fully active apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers. It means that we would be sending out 2,000 people every year into God's kingdom, into all the countries of the earth, to do God's work. 2,000 people a year. This would make this community one of the largest sending Christian organizations on earth. In fact, we would be sending more people than most countries. This number is huge. This number, if you think about the kingdom impact that we would have all over the world from sending 2,000 people equipped, ready, engaged, ready to do what God has called them to do. In my mind, this number is worth doing. This number makes this like, and it wouldn't even be that hard. I mean, the people are already here. We don't even have to do much about it. Think about it this way for a second. If you think about churches in my home country is America, I'll say America. It's probably the same for your home countries too. But the paradigm for this kind of thing happening in America is buckets. So if you think about a bucket, in my home country, the way that most people in my position think is I've got all these people in my bucket. They all came in here. Maybe I'll be able to convince them to leave someday. Maybe I'll be able to convince them to leave. Maybe there's something I could do that would get them to jump out of the bucket. But our paradigm is quite different. Okay? Our paradigm isn't bucket. Our paradigm is this. Our paradigm is pipes. Everybody is going to get here someday. And everybody is going to leave. The question's not who's leaving, right? Here, the question is, who of you are going to leave? Right? In our case, we already know the answer. The answer is?
Everybody.
Everybody. The question is not who's leaving. The question is, who are you going to be when you leave? Who are you going to be when you leave? Right? So the picture I like to have in my mind is, you know, when you're sitting at Burger King at Terminal 3, and you look down and you see all the people walking out. They're all leaving our city, right? We've all been there. We all know there's going to be one day that you're all going to be walking through that place for the last time, right? The question is not, are you going to walk through there? All of us know the answer. The answer is yes, I'm going to leave there someday for the last time. The question is, who are you going to be when you walk through that gate? Who are you going to be when you walk through that gate? Because it's coming. That day is coming for all of us. Who are you going to be? The follow-on question is, we've got hundreds of thousands of people flowing through our city that God intends for them to be activated, equipped, empowered, apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers. Are we going to partner with what God's doing in order to get them there, that when they walk through that time for the last time, when they walk through that gate for the last time, who are they going to be? Who are they going to be? Pretty awesome. The magnitude of this thing, you start to see how important it is and how God wants to strategically use our city for His benefit, for His glory, for the transformation of the nations. Okay, let's go to that question. Some of you are saying, but that's not me. I'm not really a church guy. I'm not really, this is great, but relational community, I'm fine to be a part of one, but disciple maker, how does that work? If that's you, this is for you. Listen up, okay? In the 1970s, Lauren Cunningham, who's the founder of YWAM, who's one of the largest missionary, they are the largest missionary sending organization on earth. They send tens of thousands of people out on short-term missions every year. And then Bill Bright, who's kind of the second largest missionary sending organization. So Bill Bright and Lauren Cunningham were having lunch one day. The Lord had given Bill Bright 7 words, and he wrote them on a piece of paper, and the Lord had given Lauren Cunningham 7 words, and he wrote them on a piece of paper, and as they had lunch, they exchanged these pieces of paper, and they opened them up, and on this paper were these 7 words. I want to write them now, hopefully my pens are... business, government, education, art, church and religion would be one. Family and media. These These are called 7 mountains. These are called 7 spheres of influence. These are the ways that God has designed our society to be influenced. These are the 7 ways that God calls people to influence society. Church is only one of those 7 ways that God intends to influence our society. Let's talk about, for example, one thing that frequently happens in church is you get a really dynamic guy or girl. And he's done a lot in business, and he's a really charismatic guy, and our tendency, and I've done this before, my tendency is to go, oh, you need to come preach at our church. And he comes and he preaches at our church, and it's just not, it doesn't work for him, it doesn't work for me, it doesn't work for us. And you kind of left going, what just happened there? One thing that we need to start realizing is that not everyone is called to church. But our tendency as a church is to somehow fit everyone into something around here. Everyone is going to be a worship pastor, everybody can be a children's person, everybody can be a greeter, everyone can be something, because this is the only place where you can really serve God in our society. Sorry, but this is it for you. And for a lot of us, we would go, I'm going to die. Right? How can this be? This doesn't work for me. The idea, and these people that are coming to our city, all of them are called to one of these areas too. They're not all church people. They come to our church and kind of go, this is great, but it's not really for me. What if that guy intersected with some business guy that he really did connect with because they're talking about businessy things? Or what if some guy in government goes, I'm just going to start a study in my business thing because corruption is such a big deal. So we're just going to talk about how corruption really screws our society, and we're just going to get some guys together to talk about that thing. Wouldn't that be an awesome place for somebody to intersect with Jesus and intersect with other people who love Jesus and know how to serve him in their place and their sphere of influence? Right? Could we build this network of relational communities and it not just be limited to this, what we do on a Sunday morning? But could we intersect all these people that are coming through our city in the places where they need to be intersected? That it wouldn't be about us anymore and come join our thing, but that we would go and then we'd be able to serve them by providing them what they need in the places they need to meet Jesus. So yes, I believe that we are all called to be disciple makers. But are we all called to be disciple makers in here on a Sunday morning? No way. No way. Right? Each one of you, God has specifically wired you to be thinking in terms of all these other people that are out there. And I've had conversations with you, and you guys are all like, what about that guy? And what about this guy? And what about that guy? And in the past, my mind has been like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help that guy. And it's not until recently that I realized I'm not supposed to help that guy. You're supposed to help that guy. Because you are all disciple makers, and you all have the answer, and you all have what God has already put in you to do and to be who God's made you to be, so that you can reach all these people that are coming through our city. And that so that when you get here, when God sends you to some other city, when he sends you to some other place, that you already know how to do this thing. And you could go there, and you could do the same thing all over again, because God's not wired you any differently. He's already made you a disciple maker. You're just applying what you learned here to do it somewhere else. Right? Could we build a network of really placed in the path of all of these people flowing through our city? And then our question would not be who's leaving, but the question would be, who are you going to be when you leave? Who are you going to be when you leave? And then when we're in our places of business or government or education, that the thing that would be going through our minds is, okay, I know God has brought you here for a reason. Because God wanted to intersect you and he wanted to transform you from raw to ready. Would we have the question in our minds of, okay, who is this person? Who is God making this person to be? And how can I partner with God's work in their life? How can I partner with what God's already doing in their lives, so that they can also be on the same journey I'm on from raw to ready? Could we do that? Could we do that? Could we build relational communities strategically placed in the path of all these fish, that we'd be able to send out at least 2,000 people ready into the kingdom. Could we do that? That's my question. I'm going to throw out some verses. This is all good ideas, but this is actually in the Bible. Let's read Psalm 2, 7, and 8. If you could stand up, Brad, and just shout it out real loud and clear.
I will declare the decree the Lord has said to me. You are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will give you the nations for your inheritance, and the ends of the earth for your possession.
Awesome. So, another way to describe this from raw to ready. God is calling us his sons and daughters. He's saying, you're my kids, and I just want you to do this thing. And it equates. Psalm 2:7 says, today you've become my son, you've become my daughters, and I've become your father. And the next thing he does is because of this relationship, and because we've made this transformation of you guys now becoming my sons, here's the thing I want you to do. Ask of me, and I will give the nations as your inheritance. Ask of me, and I will give the nations as your inheritance, the ends of the earth as your possession. In my mind, where this goes, God is sending all of us into the nations to bring the nations back to Jesus. And this is how he's using our city in that process. This is how he's using us in the process of bringing all men back to him. And so he goes, you guys are my sons and daughters. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to recognize that I'm calling you to ask me for the nations, that I would make the ends of the earth your possession. That's how awesome this thing is, right? A direct response to our relationship with God is that he would say, okay, do this thing. Go. You got it. Just ask. All you got to do is ask. You don't even have to do anything. Just ask me. Do one more. Do another verse. Nate, you want to stand up and read? This is Romans 8:19. And again, pay attention to what he says for sons to do.
For all creation is waiting eagerly for that future day when God will reveal who his children really are.
God is waiting. Okay, the NIV says, all creation, it says all creation, that's people, that's birds, that's trees, that's earth, that's the whole thing, right? All the people and all the earth are waiting with eager anticipation. They're like expectant. They're looking for something, and they're waiting for it. And the thing that they're waiting for is for the sons of God to be revealed. Okay? That's this. All creation, the whole creation is waiting for the sons of God to be revealed. And our job is to get people looking like sons and daughters. All of creation is waiting for us to do our job. All of creation is waiting for the city of Beijing to partner with what God's already doing. All of creation is waiting for it. Yes, this is a big deal. Yes, this is a big job. Yes, this is how God is strategically using our city for his kingdom purpose. There's other cities and other churches that are called to do other stuff. That's not us. We're called to bring people from raw to ready. And all creation is waiting for it. This last passage I want to read is Luke 22:29. And I want to read it because it just speaks to my heart so much. You're going to open this thing. This is one of those verses that, sometimes I've read the Bible a lot, and I've probably read this verse a few times at least, but I've never seen it before. And then I saw it, I read it a couple weeks ago and went, oh my gosh, I've never read that verse before. And it was just so powerful to me. So if you could open there, if you have a Bible, I just really like you to soak this in. And it's the Luke 22, verse 29. 29 and 30. Because this part is like, this is what it's all about. This is it. So here I'll read Luke 22 verses 29. And I confer on you a kingdom. Okay? I confer on you a kingdom. So this here, right? This whole thing happening here, this is the kingdom that God has conferred on us. He's given to us. He says, this is the thing that I want you to do. Okay? I've conferred on you a kingdom. Just as my Father has conferred one on me. So the same thing that Jesus did, the Father did for Jesus, Jesus is now doing for us. Okay? The Father gave a kingdom to Jesus, and now Jesus is saying, now I've given one to you. I've given you some things to do. I've given you an area, a territory, a thing that I'm asking you to steward. Okay? Now here's the reason why. Why did the Father give a kingdom to Jesus, and why has Jesus now given us this? I confer on your kingdom just as my Father conferred one on me, so that you may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom. So that you may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom. You know why God did this? You know why Jesus is giving us this? Because he wants to spend time with us. He just wants to be with us. He goes, you know, the whole reason I'm doing this, so that you could eat with me. You could drink with me. We could do this thing together. Because I'm in this thing. And if you partner with me in this thing, you're going to do this thing with me. Right? So that you would eat with me and drink with me. Because I want to see this thing happen. And it's really only going to happen through you. So can we do this thing together? Because I really just like you guys, and I really want to spend time with you guys. You guys are awesome. You guys are my precious treasure. And I designed this whole thing just so we could be together. Just so we could be together. How awesome is that? Yeah? I'm going to share one other thing that I really love about this. This is kind of my... So this has been... It's funny, it's kind of real simple on the board, but this has been many years of condensing and thinking and meditating and the Lord bringing stuff together. But, you know, one thing about these people who are raw, if there's one common denominator among every expat in Beijing that I found, is that they're all lonely. They're all lonely. They all are looking for somebody. They all came here, they left their family, they left their friends, they came here, and they don't have anybody. And they're just lonely. What's the one thing that all these people need? What's the one thing they're all looking for? They're all looking for this. They're all looking for the very thing that God wants to use to transform their lives. That's awesome. How is it that God would so design it that the very tool that He's given to us to change their lives meets them at their very point of need? Isn't that awesome? And let me show you one more thing about loneliness. It's just really cool about loneliness and community together. And I doubt my pens are really going to work for this, but I'm going to try because it's
Use the purple one I just gave you.
purple one. Here we go. Okay. Loneliness. Ooh, that's a good one. Loneliness leads to community. Community, at the heart of community, in my mind, is really somebody just saying, I believe in you. I believe in you. I believe that you're worth spending time with. I believe that you're worth being with. I believe that you have something of value. Okay? I believe in you. Okay? I believe in you. If you believe in somebody, that means you're going to give them a responsibility. Right? I believe in you, and here's how I'm going to prove it. I'm going to give you something to do because I believe in you. That says responsibility. And responsibility leads to activation. The very thing that people struggle with directly leads to the very thing that we want them to be, that we want them to do. Right? In my mind, I look at that and go, oh my gosh, God, you're awesome. How is it possible that you would design, that you would craft this thing so elegantly that the people coming here, we have the very thing that the people coming here really need. Not only that, but the thing that they need leads to the thing you want to do in their lives and the way you want to bring transformation to your entire kingdom throughout the earth. Just look at that and go, oh yeah, we got to do this thing. So, I've been, a lot of you, this might be the second or third time you've heard this, maybe it's your first time, whatever. But when I look at this, this number right here, I look at that and go, there's no way I cannot do that. There's no way I have to do that. I have to do that. This number is too big. And it's too easy. It's not even that hard. They're all coming and they're all leaving. It's not even that hard to do. And Jill and I have kind of looked at that and kind of gone, okay, this is what the next season of our lives is going to be about. Right? It's going to be about this. It's going to be about active when they leave. How could we partner with what God wants to do in this city? We've kind of looked at that and kind of gone, yep, this is us. This is what we're about. This is who we need to be. And Next is a part of this thing. Right? Next is already a part of this. God's already doing this in our city. This isn't new. He's been doing it for a while. And for those of us who've been here, we can scroll through the names of people that you've seen that happen with. Right? There's already been quite a few people who've flowed through Next anyway, and have gone from raw to ready, and now they're doing amazing stuff all over the world. But we need more. We need more. And there's other people in the city who are doing this too. But we need more. For us at Next, where I think this goes, where I think we need to go, where I know we need to go, I just did say it like I mean it, because I know it already. Where we need to go is we need another Next. We need another Next. So my goal is that by January of 2015 that we have another Next. We have something else, another thing that people can join, and another thing that people can go from raw to ready. That's what we need. And then in a few years, a few more, and a few more, and a few more, and a few more. And some of them aren't even going to look like Next, and some of them aren't even going to be called Next. But we need to be thinking in terms of how can we expand this net and start meeting people where they're at. And for me, I'm a church guy. So for me, the way this thing gets built in my sphere, for what I'm responsible for, is probably going to be churches. But for you, as you expand this net, it's probably not. It could be. Some of you are going to go with me and Jill, and we're going to do this thing together. We're going to be partners in the thing together. Some of you are going to have to do it a different way. You're going to have to think about new ways of doing this thing, about new ways that you can bring people from raw to ready in your spheres of influence. And I don't know how to do that. But if this is what God's really about in our city, we need to figure that out. We really need to figure that out. So for Next, one thing is that I think we need to have another Next. January 2015 is the goal. The other thing is what happens to this group? What happens here? So one thing that's happening, I've shared this now with the elders of the BICF and some of the people, key decision makers over there, and I'm in conversations with them about potentially coming on in an upgraded capacity at the BICF. What would that mean for Next here? My intention is to still be in the same role that I am here. Because if we do this thing, Next needs to continue to be what Next is, right? For the last 8 years, we have been constantly innovating and thinking outside the box and trying new things. And this is kind of what I think this group is going to continue to be, is kind of the research and development part of this, kind of the forward thinking, the what's next of this whole thing, right? Isn't that pretty cool? Like God had a plan, like even before we knew it. That I think I don't know, he does that sometimes. Yeah, because we really need that. We need people who are kind of thinking 2 steps ahead of everybody else so that the people can be in their comfort zone, other people can kind of be pushing things forward. And we are probably going to continue to push things forward as we've already done and is already in our DNA and already in that stuff. But getting more intentional about what are we actually pushing forward? What are we actually thinking about? What are we actually innovating on? And it tying back to this bigger picture. So my mind, where this goes for Next is, number one, we need to have another Next. And number two, we need to be intentionally partnering with who we really are, which is kind of that forward thinking, innovating, pushing the envelope further.